Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. I'm Ben, and this season, thanks to Carpride, I've had the ability to test not one, but two of their Carplay units on each of my big bore Dual Sport ADV builds. I put the W702 on my Honda XR650L and the W702 Pro model on my DR650, and then went out and did a whole bunch of testing on all sorts of roads and trails. So these things have definitely seen some action, and I've had some time to decide what I like about them, what maybe I don't like about them. So we'll go over all that. We'll talk a bit about the features that the Pro model has that the regular model lacks, and at the end I'll let you know whether or not I think the Pro model is worth the $50 upgrade. So if that sounds interesting, make sure you stick around. Let's get into it. So if we unbox the Pro model here, it's going to look exactly like the original version that's on the XR, except for this little guy right here. And we'll talk about that in a bit. The backside looks exactly the same mount, same power cable with the fuse in line. Dig a little deeper into the box and we find the handlebar clamp. So this just clips onto the ball on the back of the unit, and then the opposite end clamps to a handlebar or GPS bar if you like. I shortened things up a bit and attached it to sort of the inside of the dash on the XR650L here. This GPS bar clamp here is the only thing that comes in the package with the Pro model that the original version does not. Also comes with a bit of hardware. And this is the mount that I used on the DR650. There's a couple different spacers in here for different bar sizes. All of them are a little bit smaller than the 1-inch GPS bar that I put on the DR, so that's a little bit disappointing. It did work, but as you'll see in a minute here when we get it attached, it kind of is a little bit of a stretch to make it fit on there. So we'll swap that ball out for the bracket, which you can pick two different locations depending on how high you want that unit mounted. Put a little bit of blue thread locker on here, even though they've got some dried on stuff in place. And actually before I did that, I removed all 4 screws that hold the bracket to the back of the unit and just put some blue thread locker on those to make sure they didn't rattle loose. Put the hardware in, get that fastened on. And then here you can see it's a little bit of a stretch to fit it on this bar since this is made for a slightly smaller GPS bar. And we'll talk about some issues that I ran into with the other power cable, but this one is meant to be plugged into a 5-volt 2.5 amp jack. Here we've got some information on the unit, lots of good stuff in the owner's manual here that helps you figure out how to connect it and use it. As far as powering this unit, I decided to run the line down the neck of the frame here, and originally I just ran it directly to the battery here, so I did crimp on some little connections and just wired it directly to my Tusk lithium battery here. And if you are wiring directly into the 12-volt circuit, it's only going to draw about an amp rather than 2.5 amps if you're going the 5-volt USB route, which is certainly a good thing if you're looking to mount this on an older bike with a lower output stator. And initially I thought this would be kind of nice because I could turn the unit on or off whenever I wanted to, but I ran into a bit of an issue when I was riding both of these bikes with my dad. I powered both bikes and both units up, but then it turned out that my phone connected to the DR one first and caused a bit of an issue then when it later connected to the XR. And if you guys watch this video, you kind of already know what happened here. When I got on the DR, I tried to turn the unit on. I was thinking that there was something wrong. I thought the cable had possibly gotten cut or rubbed up against something and blew the fuse, or maybe even that the vibrations from the GPS bar had actually killed the unit. But I think what happened here is that when it was connected to my phone and then the CarPlay unit on the XR grabbed the connection from my phone, it sort of just glitched this out. So even though it looked like it was off the entire time we were riding, I think it was actually on. And then when I brought the bike back and let it sit in the garage for a week, the next time that I went to go start it back up, I turned the key on, I got no lights, I hit the start button and got absolutely nothing, which is exactly why I created this wiring harness using this special plug that plugged right into a keyed accessory wire underneath the DR's tank here. And then I just plugged the unit into this instead, which should completely solve all my problems. And to be honest, I like it a lot better now that the unit turns on with the bike and also that it turns back off. And I'll explain why that is in a little bit. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what a CarPlay is, essentially it's a 7-inch HD screen that really can't do much unless you connect your phone to it. So let's get this thing powered up off of this power bank here. This is actually the way that I've been powering the XR the entire time. I don't know that this is something that I would recommend as a long-term solution, as it seems like they do only last for 2 to 3 hours, kind of depending on what the unit is doing and how much power it's consuming while you're using it. But I'm just going to plug it in here now so I don't have to have the bike's ignition on while we're going through this. compass. So again, without a phone connected to this, there's not really anything you can do. There's plenty of things to click on, but it basically just tells you that you need to start connecting some devices for any of it to work. And that is all sort of with the exception of this card here. You can stick a card with some sort of media in it. So that's the XR and the regular model. If we head over to the DR, which has the Pro model on it, essentially things are the same here. We definitely need a phone connected to use any of this stuff, except this compass and the barometer. And the compass is a little bit odd, although it does seem like it works well. It just doesn't work the way a normal compass would. And you can see that on this northbound road here, the little red side of the dial is pointed up towards the end for north. And as we start to bank on the corner, it almost looks like it's going to act like a normal compass until we take the full corner here, level off. And you can see that rather than the red pointing to magnetic north, it's instead pointing towards the right side of the compass, or where the E is for east. And then right below the compass, it tells you your bearing even in degrees, which is really kind of neat. Now, if you guys watched the very first video where I went out and tested this unit on the DR, you know that I had to calibrate it, which essentially means you have to sort of power it and then spin it around in a figure 8 so it can sort of get its bearings and figure itself out. I did notice that after rewriting single track, which probably did cause the unit to be bounced around a little bit and vibrated quite a lot, it seemed like it was having some problems. It was telling me that I needed to recalibrate the compass, and I believe I took it off and ended up doing that, but by the time I got around to doing it, it seemed like maybe it had fixed itself anyways. It probably would be best to have some sort of vibration damping device between the unit itself and the bike. But with that being said, the minimal testing that I've done hasn't seemed to cause it any issues. And of course, I will be connecting my phone to this in a bit, so I'll have access to tons and tons of apps and different ways to navigate. But I've got to say, it really is, well, kind of nice to just have this sort of in your back pocket. And of course, by in your back pocket, I mean up on your dash without the need for a cell phone. So if you lose your phone, if it gets stolen or broken or isn't charged enough to connect it to the Carplay unit, you could still use this and navigate. Of course, you could always carry a physical compass in your pocket, but it's sort of nice to know that it's always there. And directly to the right of the compass, you can see the barometer here, so 303 meters above sea level, or 977 hectopascals. And this is something that obviously isn't going to change a whole lot unless you're doing some major ascents or descents, and you kind of can see it going up and down here a little bit as I'm going through the hills at Harrison Hills. For my area, the places that I ride, it's not really something that I need, but if you're on a trip somewhere where you're possibly concerned about your elevation changes, it definitely would be a nice thing to have. I have no idea how accurate it is. It definitely seems like it works, and maybe it's something that would be really helpful to you. To me, it's just kind of a neat feature. Now, earlier I mentioned that I prefer to have this unit attached to a keyed accessory wire so it turns on and off with the bike. And that certainly is nice because you don't have to hit the power button when you're going to take off, or hit it again, I guess, when you're done riding. But it's also really nice because when you are using this unit and walk away from it, and basically you go out of range with your Bluetooth communicator and your cell phone, which does happen pretty often to me on rides, when I get back to the bike, it seemed like nothing ever wanted to auto connect.
So what happened? My phone just gave up?
Unless you cycled power on the unit.
Oh, now it's locking on. And there we go.
Most of the time, if I'm going to walk away from the bike, I'm turning that key off. And then, of course, when I get back to the bike and am ready to jump back on, I just turn the key on, the unit comes on, and then we can take off down the trail without having to even touch the unit itself. It just automatically connects. And there is a little bit of a delay, but honestly, by the time you get moving, it's really not too bad. So let's take a look at that. We will unplug the unit here, essentially the same thing as turning my key off and back on, and we'll start the timer here. The unit takes a little while to sort of run through its startup function here. It's turning on, and then we'll start to see things connecting here in a bit. So brightness gets turned up a tad, and we see the Android Auto icon up at the top here, and the Bluetooth checkmark turns green to show that we're connected. And prior to this, of course, my phone has already been linked, so there's a bit more of a process to start with, but once things have already been connected at one point, everything will attach itself pretty quickly, and without you having to really do anything. Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth, of course, has to be on your phone, and then it'll basically reconfigure and project your phone's functionality and information onto the screen, along with any apps that have CarPlay functionality built into them already. There definitely are some apps that I really wish would transfer, like the Polaris app, but there's no functionality in that that app yet. I hope that there will be someday. In the meantime, though, there are plenty of other map applications that we'll look at here in a second that really work pretty well on here. And if we click the settings button here, it will let you change things like whether or not your notifications will pop up on the screen, day and night mode, all that sort of stuff. And anytime you hit this button down in the bottom left, it will split the screen between your most recent application and then anything that it thinks that you might want to use because it's something that you've ran maybe in the background in the past. So for me, it's a couple different music options. Apparently my wife and kids were using the Amazon Music account, but there are some other good options there. And if we hit that button again, it will take us back to the main screen showing us all the apps. However, no matter where you are, it will always show you the time and your battery status as well as your signal status in the bottom right. We scoot back down to the bottom here. You can see that there aren't a whole lot of useful apps that I've got in here other than the weather app, which would work if this wasn't connected to the Wi-Fi on my phone. I don't get enough cell signal in my concrete garage way out in the boonies here, but that is kind of a nice feature when you're out in the world and able to get cell phone signal. As we saw earlier, we can open apps like the Amazon Music app here and scroll through a couple different options. It's not the normal complete functionality that you'd get on your phone, but it is sort of close. But of course, if you actually want to be able to listen to something while you're riding, you'll need something in your helmet to pick up the Bluetooth signal and play it into your ears. And if you're unfamiliar with what a Bluetooth communicator is, essentially it's just a little device that gets attached to your helmet, has two speakers on either side of the helmet, as well as a microphone, and essentially it just allows you to Bluetooth to somebody else who has a communicator or to a device or your phone like this. And with that in place, you'll be able to listen to music, and using the screen buttons here, you can pause, skip forward, backwards, whatever you need to do. Really kind of a nice thing and allows you a much more visual experience rather than fumbling around trying to hit buttons with big gloves on. And with speakers and a microphone in the helmet, we can hit this button and actually use the phone as a telephone. So this is showing me all of my contacts. So I can just pick whoever I need to call and it will connect me. We can also hit the messages button here and it will bring up any messages that are stored on your phone. So you can go through those, review them, or possibly start a new conversation or answer an old one. It looks like my Smart Life app here that I use to run all of the smart devices in my house are also available for use on this device. So I could use it to turn on or off anything that I wanted to at the house. I don't really change a whole lot of that anymore, so I'm not even logged into it, but it is nice to know that the functionality is there if you're away from home and want to change something. And sort of along those same lines, we can hit this microphone button and it will bring up the Google Assistant that you can talk to through your headset. We do, of course, have options like the Osmand app for navigation. This app definitely seems to have some good info on it, and it's not one that I use a whole lot, but there are really some pretty cool bits of information, like the county land borders that are in green and all of these dashed lines that are trails in the woods. We can, of course, also access Google Maps, which isn't my favorite for off-road travel, but does have some nice features, like the fact that it shows me all of the points that I've stored over the last however many years that I've been using Google Maps on my phone. You can also turn on the satellite information, which really can be pretty nice for off-road riding, depending on where you're at. You can zoom in and see information that isn't necessarily built into any system, like where people are doing donuts at intersections in the middle of the woods. And this can be really nice when you're, say, in a new patch of woods that you don't know very well, or you want to see how far an old logging road looks like it goes. There's certainly trails like this one that aren't in any sort of database, but can clearly be seen from the satellite images. And for those of you guys who have watched the adventures that I've been out on when I've been testing these units, you know that the Gaia GPS app is sort of my go-to. It really provides a lot of great information like the Osmand app, and it also allows you to navigate a route that you've set up on your phone, which is what I did here. Really does work pretty nice. It's not quite the same as navigation on the Google Maps application. If you go off the track that you've laid out for yourself, it won't tell you turn by turn how to get back on. It basically just tells you which direction you have to go to get back there, which in certain situations, like out on the road, could be annoying, but off of the road, it's kind of nice because it's not continually telling you to turn around or to go back or to do a U-turn. It just basically kind of lets you do whatever you want to until you get back onto the track that you'd laid out. And obviously finding little things like that is something that is just going to take time and some practice. These are certainly something that I would suggest sort of playing with a lot before you ever try try to head out on a big trip or anything. There are also some apps that you can purchase that sort of combine probably all of those things that I was showing you there sort of into one app, like Onyx Off-Road. I've never personally used it, but I know it will show you a lot of great things, like specifically who owns a tract of land. You can put things like the satellite view over the map or remove it. I think you might even be able to lay things like weather radar right over the map, and it'll show you where you are in relativity to the storm that's possibly coming in. So definitely some cool functions and features. You might just have to pay a little bit extra for some of them, or maybe bounce around between a couple apps to get exactly what you need. Now, earlier I pointed out something in the bottom left corner of the Pro model here that the regular didn't have, and that's this little light sensing device. So essentially you can adjust the light output from the system using this, or you can turn it on auto and it will automatically sense what the light in the situation that you're in is like and adjust the brightness of the screen accordingly. Definitely takes a bit, but really is kind of a nice feature and sort of saves you from possibly having to stop or take your hand off of the bar to adjust it. On the regular model over on the XR, you still can change the brightness, but it's something that you have to do completely manually. It's not going to adjust it based on the light in the area. So for those of you that are counting at home, the major differences between the original and the Pro version are the light sensing ability that we just looked at, the compass and barometer, I guess if you can call that two separate features. And then essentially the last one is something that I don't really put a whole lot of stock in that anybody's really going to need to use. It basically just allows you to connect two Bluetooth communicators to the unit. So you would then be able to share music or have an intercom function, not both, either or, where you could basically talk to your passenger through the unit itself. And I guess maybe, if you're somebody that rides 2-up a lot, maybe that would be something that you would find useful. For me though, any of the times that I've gone out and ridden with my dad, I don't really have too much of a problem connecting my Bluetooth to his Bluetooth, so we can talk back and forth. The comms that I use, I could basically play music and talk to him at the same time. So I guess I would rather do that if I was going to. I believe I could also get turn-by-turn directions then from the unit. So for me, it's not really a function that I can see being useful. I mean, I think there are plenty of workarounds around it. If each of you have a Bluetooth communicator, you should be able to just connect those and then also connect your comm to the Carplay unit, depending on the Bluetooth communicator that you've got and the functionality that it has. Maybe that would be difficult or impossible. My comms, though, like I said, it works just fine. So for me, the only real reason to upgrade to the Pro would be basically for that light sensing ability and for the compass and the barometer. I do really like that the compass itself can be used completely without the phone. So if you lose signal or something, even you're too far into the woods and you didn't download a map to your phone, or you're in an area that you forgot to, for whatever reason, you can't navigate with anything other than that, it is nice to know that it's there. Of course, if you never get off the pavement, maybe this is something that is completely obsolete, but to me, it is something that I can definitely see some people really liking. Is it worth the $50 upgrade? I mean, I guess it depends whether or not you think you're going to use it. If you think a compass would be useful, or you think it would be cool, or you'd like to maybe just go out and navigate with a compass sometime without having to bring your phone, I mean, in that instance, I think it's really cool. The light sensing ability, I think, certainly is a really nice to have. It's not a need to have, I think, but definitely something that does make night riding a little bit better. I have been out a few times with both of these. One thing that I will say is that I have had a problem where I've needed to go in and physically kind of toggle back and forth between night mode and day mode, and you can set it to automatic, but it never seems like that really works. And I don't know if that has something to do with time zones and it's confused about that for some reason, or maybe it's just a little bit darker earlier than it thinks it needs to switch over, and I would rather have it in dark mode. Either way though, once everything is properly configured, I've had no problem riding with this thing at night. It is certainly a bit of a large screen, which I was a little bit concerned about, but I've had absolutely no issue being able to see past it. It doesn't mess with my night vision at all. I really never had any problem with the XR either. Again, I just had to manually turn that down. So at the end of the day, it's really up to you guys whether or not those functionalities are really worth the $50, or if maybe you think that being able to connect two different headsets to one screen would be something that would be helpful to you. Beyond that though, they seem to work more or less the same. I've had zero issues other than the ones that I've sort of created for myself, And I don't really see that being a reoccurring thing unless, again, I'm going to try to turn both of them on and try to let both of them connect to my phone at once. That seems to be something that they don't like. But other than that, these have taken everything that I've thrown at them. I've not been careful about keeping the screens clean when I'm in dusty environments. I just use them like I would like to be able to with a glove on most of the time. Works totally fine. Nothing's gotten scratched up or anything. I have ran into issues where it will sort of scoot around past where I intended it to, and I don't know if it's something that I'm doing wrong. It hasn't really inhibited me from using them at all. And to be honest, I really sort of have fallen in love with these things. At first I thought they seemed, well, a little bit like overkill and something that was kind of silly, but I've got to say, having that giant screen, having all those different options and features, and especially the different types of maps and apps that you can use, and of course, as we move forward, more app developers are going to start to develop more things to be able to transfer to a CarPlay unit like this, since they essentially need to do that for them to work in any vehicles. And since most new vehicles nowadays come with something like this, I think we're going to see a lot more options in the future. So really kind of a cool thing to have. I really like having the much larger screen in comparison to the old Garmin Nuvi GPSs that I was using. Those were also sort of dim. They were of course designed to be inside of a vehicle, not outside on a motorcycle. They definitely weren't a bad option, and for the $20 to $60 that I was paying for them used on eBay, I really can't complain. It definitely is sort of nice to just have something that just works on its own, that you don't need a phone connected to. I have run into, I guess I don't know if you want to call it issues, but a major drawback to having your phone connected to something like this, especially for a long time, is that it really does drain the battery down pretty quickly. I don't know exactly why it is, but it seems like having my phone connected to one of these makes the phone work a lot harder than when I'm just in my wife's car. And a lot of times when I'm on a motorcycle, I'm riding for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, where in the car, I mean, we don't usually take that long of a trip, so maybe it would do the same. But my phone really will get kind of to the point when riding around connected to one of these things that I can feel the heat in my pocket.
This thing's like a hand warmer.
That's definitely not great for the phone. It of course does kill the battery, so I would highly suggest having some way to charge your phone on the road if you're going to be using one of these when you're traveling. I don't know if that's something that's specific to this brand. I have tried a different one of these on my 701 Enduro, and it seems like maybe that one runs a little bit cooler, but that could have just been the day or what I was doing. I don't really know, but it is definitely, I think, the thing that I dislike about these things the most. But it hasn't stopped me from using it, and I've got to say I really do like having the giant screen with all this information on it. It definitely is kind of cool. Certainly not necessary, of course, but if you're somebody that is interested in one of these and you'd like to pick one up or check current pricing, I'll have an affiliate link down in the description. That doesn't cost you guys anything extra, but it helps me make more videos like this, and I definitely appreciate that. Huge thanks to anybody that's been using my affiliate links. Thanks for watching, guys. If this video was helpful to you, make sure you give it a thumbs up. That definitely helps me out. Thanks for watching. Take care, stay safe, stay swanky, get out, enjoy this beautiful world any chance you get. And if you want to see more videos of us cruising around the woods, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. We'll catch you next time, guys.